Good evening. Welcome to the 5-8, where we discuss each of the week's 5 most fucked up topics for 8 minutes. So, 5 topics, 8 minutes, 2 hosts, 2 guests tonight. Yeah, because 50th episode. 50 episodes, by the way.
Yeah.
Some singing, a lot of curse words, and as many cocktails as we deem necessary. LB, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? What you drinking?
I am drinking a Manhattan. It's not my 50th Manhattan, but it's close.
It's close. Yeah, I'm having root beer in a champagne glass because I was rushing across town and forgot to get my champagne. So this is what I'm drinking, which is great. Root beer is perfectly fine with me. I love it.
I think it's less sweet than champagne. You know, it's good. I like root beer.
Yeah. And we have a nice long night ahead of us, so I'll find a champagne bottle somewhere somehow.
First, quick note up top: there will be an after hours tonight after the show, so look for the link for that later on in the show. And I didn't tell you this before, but I do have a little announcement. I'm going to retire because I don't know if you knew this. I made so much money this week.
You did?
Yeah. I auctioned off all of my old tubes of Burt's Bees, and Marjorie Taylor Greene paid $100,000 for each one. So,
oh my God, who knew?
I know, crazy, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I wonder where that money came from to begin with. This is the question.
The only thing more ridiculous than that was HBO Max deciding to change its name to Max for some reason.
I can't even.
Yeah,
I just can't.
I think everything should just, it feels like we're getting to it's like the idiocracy where Brano just owns everything and everything is just called Brano now.
Yeah.
Max. What's this? It's Max. Newsmax. Max.
Everything has to have an X in it.
I guess so. I don't know. It's very strange. I don't like it. But this is the simulation we're living in, and you know what? This is going to be a good show. I'm excited for the show.
It's going to be a good show. I've got a little bit of a 70s vibe going here. So we'll play with that. I don't normally do a fashion anything, but a little bit for tonight, a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
So do I. I do too.
You do too. We decided it's a vibe. Okay. Let's jump right into it because we do have 2 guests. We can't wait to get to our 2 guests.
Yeah, we want to get to
and so let's start our first topic.
Let's do it.
All right. You're on the clock.
Okay. Texas Hold'em is the name of the topic. So I'm fascinated by what's going on in Texas with this Ken Paxton guy.
Yeah.
I've written about it. It's just, I can't, it just boggles the mind that this guy is real to some degree. So what happened was, Ken Paxton sort of out of nowhere accused the Speaker of the House in Texas, at the Texas State House, who you're not going to believe this is a Republican, of being drunk on the job. He said as he sipped his Manhattan.
Are any of them sober? Is the question.
It gets better.
Okay.
Then it turns out that the reason that Paxton seemed to be like sort of on the offensive here is because the House Speaker was they're going to impeach him. Yeah. Okay. So just to give a little review of who this guy is. Okay. First of all, he's been under federal indictment for fraud since 2015. So almost the entire time he's been Attorney General of Texas, in charge of executing the laws in the state of Texas, he's been under federal indictment. If that's not enough, he was accused by 7 of his top aides of bribery and abuse of office. And we're not talking about like intern coffee boy. These are like deputies, Republicans. Christian, right-wing got accusing him of this stuff. 7 of them. 7. Not 1, not 2. 7. I made this joke before. There are 7 people in Sly and the Family Stone. That's a lot of people accusing you of something. When you have that many people risking their jobs, usually they're probably right. And then Paxton behaves like an innocent person would by firing the ones who would take it back. So, okay. So then they sued him for wrongful termination, and it was found that he had to pay $3.3 million. And he was like, great, the state of Texas is going to pay that. So that's who this guy is. Also, I don't know if you've seen what he looks like. If you pulled a guy out of Central Casting and said, we need a corrupt politician from Texas guy, you could not find someone better. The simulation has done great work in this particular casting choice. Yeah. That's why they're impeaching him. Okay, because the Texas doesn't want to pay the $3.3 million. I
see. Okay. All right.
Now he calls the guy drunk. his defense apparently is going to be, no, those crimes happened like last term. You're not allowed to impeach me.
It's a Mitch McConnell. It's a Mitch McConnell vibe going there. Yeah.
Not only that, Ken Paxton is the guy that filed the lawsuit that 126 House Republicans signed on to overturn the election. So not only is he corrupt as hell, he's also an asshole. And, the reason I want to bring this up is because it's so staggeringly corrupt that a guy like this can be in charge of the, being the executive branch of the state of Texas. It's insane. And yet this is the kind of thing that we have now. Like when we find ourselves teetering into the fascist, system. If you read the Ruth Ben-Ghiat book about fascism and what corruption is, he checks, there's 7 things that she defines corruption as being, and all 7 boxes checked for this guy. And I'm glad that now maybe, I don't know, maybe they have political reasons for doing it, but still it appears that maybe he will face an actual consequence for being this corrupt for this many years, which is nice, because we have George Santos seen in our intro there. They won't throw him out of the house because they need his fucking vote. And why? To save the animals, to save the environment? No, they need his vote to trash the entire global economy to get their way. It's like, and my point here in all of this is when the people in charge of executing the laws are corrupt and nothing ever happens, it looks like nothing ever will happen, and it undermines the rule of law. We cannot have that, because that's what creates vigilantism. And that's why the fucking mob got started in Italy, by the way, in Sicily in the 19th century.
This is true.
As you know, because there were no police around. There was nobody around to settle disputes and be the judge of this shit. So the pardons is another thing. The fact that Donald Trump pardoned people who are his co-conspirators. The founding fathers, I know the Republicans like to talk about, the founding fathers intended, but you know what they didn't intend? For a guy who tried to overthrow the government to pardon his co-conspirators in the way out. Yeah. Pretty sure we can write that one in stone. So, and certainly not that they should be sold for $2 million a pop if we believe the lawsuit filed against Rudy. So that's all I got. It's infuriating.
That's a lot. That's a lot on the rule of law. My question, going back to Texas and to the corrupt AG there, what purpose could the governor have had in keeping him there? What was he had to have been providing something. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, because they're a holy trinity of awful. The governor, the lieutenant governor, and the AG, they're like a what's the snake eating the tail, except human centipede, but snake eating the tail. Like I can't decide.
I understand. And in Texas, is people don't know this if they haven't. My parents lived in Texas for quite a while, in Austin, and the governor doesn't have the same kind of powers as the lieutenant governor. In an interesting way, Texas has a very interesting structure where the lieutenant governor is actually the one running the state and doing things. So I just wonder, there's no reason to, as corrupt as it is there, you're keeping a guy like that that's under federal indictment in there for a specific purpose. Was the purpose just to generate propaganda content? Like, oh, the libs are coming after us and everything. But he was under indictment in 2015. So, and throughout all of Trump's years. So what was this? What is this about? That
if you ask Ruth, if you read the books, I mean, they recruit criminals to join them.
Listen, I understand. Yeah, it's a laboratory. Texas is a laboratory for American authoritarianism, right? Yep. That's a phrase Ruth and I together came up with. So, you still in any kind, you're putting people in there for a purpose. Either they're so destructive because they're such idiots that you have that the value of kakistocracy, right? Like where you just have people who are so stupid that you put them in there and they're going to, like Rick Perry in charge of the EPA, but also you have control over them. They're corruptible, or if they're not already corrupted and they're just tools, they're just sort of placeholders for the people who have money, have whatever they want to sort of extract, right? Use that, tear shit down that's getting in the way, get rid of guardrails and extract resources, extract contracts, whatever it might be. I just feel like with this Texas Attorney General, with this particular thing, something is going on there.
Yeah.
Underneath it with this guy that we don't know about yet. So I'm glad you brought it to our attention. I'd love to keep an eye on it, and I want to see what comes out. I mean, there's no reason to keep him. They have plenty of cronies and plenty of corrupt white men in Texas. Hello. There's no shortage. Like, why have this? Right? Why have this?
Ouroboros.
What was he bringing to the table?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, moving on. All
right, you did that in 15 seconds left. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about
owner of a lonely heart. What does that mean? The owner of a lonely heart. What does that mean?
I wanted to talk about something a little different tonight. This came out in early May. The Surgeon General came out and labeled loneliness an epidemic. It said this is really harming. I'm going to read some things to you guys because it just got passed over. There was like maybe a couple little notes of people paying attention to it. I think anytime our Surgeon General comes out and says we have an epidemic, I think it's time to pause. That's like a moment to take a stop, look at it, and think about what we can do about this, because this isn't, look, we all, at least enough of us came together, put the masks on, did the stuff for COVID, did what we needed, social distance, waited for our vaccines, got our vaccines. Those that were responsible citizens when it comes to public health follow.
Uh-oh. Did you only freeze on yours? Yeah, you're frozen. You got to unfreeze. We knew this was going to be a problem tonight, guys. There's like weird internet stuff going on out where LB is situated right now. Yeah, thank you. All right, well, she's going to come back in a minute. I think that the thing to do now, while we wait for her to come back, is to pivot a little bit. Oh, wait, here she's coming. She's coming on. I see her. I'm
so sorry.
That's okay.
I do have in the office, sometimes the internet is, so I apologize, folks. Yeah. But I'm back. So let me read this. I don't know what you said when I was gone, but I want to read what the Surgeon General actually had to say about it so that we're...
Oh my God. People do not want us to hear about the Surgeon General's loneliness. Clearly, this is not something that people want to hear about. I don't know. It is a cool frozen posture, though, I have to say. All right. While we're waiting, so that we don't wait too long, we have a video that I'm going to take her off here because she's all frozen. We have a video that our friend Chunk made. Chunk, of course, does all the animations for us at the beginning of the show, and he's amazing. And what happens is we give him little ideas, little like phrases of ideas, and he'll come in and, create these great, spaces with it. Are you back now?
I'm back. I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay.
I hope it
read the Surgeon General warning before you fade out again.
Oh my God. Our epidemic of loneliness and isolation has been an underappreciated public health crisis that has harmed individual and societal health. Our relationships are a source of healing and well-being, hiding in plain sight, one that can help us live healthier, more fulfilled, and more productive lives. Given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, we must prioritize building social connection the same way we have prioritized other critical public health issues such as tobacco, obesity, and substance use disorders. Together, we can build a country that's healthier, more resilient, less lonely, and more connected. Okay, now I want to read everybody what the statistics are for loneliness. The physical health consequences of poor or insufficient connection include a 29% increased risk of heart disease, 30% increased risk of heart disease, a 32% increased risk of stroke, a 50% increased risk of developing dementia for older adults. Additionally, lacking societal connection increases risk of premature death by more than 60%. Okay, so we need to pay attention to this. This is big, and I wanted to acknowledge this community tonight, because that we have a community around this show is I guess it's not a surprise, but it was just like you guys have kind of overwhelmed Greg and I of how you connect with one another, how we're able to come on here, and you kind of said, okay, we're going to come into this space and we're going to connect and relate to one another while the show is on. And I just so appreciate that. It's been a marvel to watch that and to watch all of you form these connections, bring your friendships in, talk to us about it, but mostly you're just talking to each other. So it is a real privilege to create a space, a safe space for community and community building. And we just want to thank all of you first and foremost on this sort of 50th, because I'm kind of shocked. We're at a 50th. This really was a lark. It was a lark. And maybe that's the special formula, maybe that's the recipe, is we just wanted to be together and be able to talk and hang out. And you guys wanted to join in on that. And then you created your own thing. So what are some of the things to be vigilant about in this space? I want to address that really quickly. And I kept the time going. I have 2 minutes left. That's all I need.
Okay.
So I think what we've also all seen in this community, some of us who've been together for a long time, we migrated over from Twitter. We watched communities there that formed spontaneously with a shared purpose, and people found relationships. How I met Greg, right? And we started collaborating was through Twitter and through our shared attention to organized crime behind the former president. And here we are, right, doing this. But and Greg, you can speak to this a little bit too. Like, we watched toxic people come in to communities and sort of break it all down and see stuff just sort of fall apart, maybe, or just a fight that people who knew each other were having publicly and using the community to fight and divide. And I think that's the stuff as you guys are tending this community, we really need to work on it like a relationship. That's what I'm hearing from the Surgeon General. We have to work on our communities, on our relationships, on our connections with one another, and keep them tender. I think that's keep them kind, be kind, keep them informed, challenge one another without harming one another. And lifting everything around us that we can. So lifting one another up, creating a stable routine, creating something that feels reliable, which hopefully Greg and I have provided for you guys. So, and for ourselves, and for all of us together. So I just encourage that. I encourage in the community that you all have built and hang out, be mindful of being tender with each other and kind. I think that's the sort of rule for me. That's the rule, and fights don't belong in a community. They don't, not like this. Yeah. So, and no one has done that yet, which has been. No,
it's such a nice group of people. It really is.
Such a nice group of people.
We're so lucky. We really
are.
Yes.
We really are. So on that note, we thought, maybe we do something a little different. No, we sing. And tonight we thought, well, maybe we'll just dance. So good,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to Chunk for all the awesome animation, and shout out to my wife, Stephanie St. John. That's the cover that they did with her band Mimi Ferocious, like 15 years ago or something. David Wilson playing the bass, like that's actual live bass, by the way, which he did live. Fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out Dave Wilson, Mike Preston, and David Ross. Okay, we're not done.
We're not done with our funness.
With our fun, because it's time for our first guest. Okay, he's the author of Compromise, Counterintelligence, and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. He's co-host of a podcast, Cleanup on Aisle 45. He's a Georgetown Hoya and the former FBI Deputy Assistant Director of Counterintelligence. Get ready. Pete Strzok, welcome to the 5-8.
That was an amazing Donna Summer cover. I'm ready. Let's get some bourbon. Go drinking.
All right, hey,
cause some trouble.
That's great. Amen to that. So how have you been? We haven't seen you in a while.
It's good. Things.
You had a good
well.
week.
Yeah,
everything all right.
Yeah. Heading into Memorial Day, it's interesting to watch Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump begin to beat the shit out of each other on the primaries, so that's always a good thing. And I have no expectation that DeSantis is going to leave standing, but his whole play is just survive in case Trump ends up in jail or incapacitated. He can it's the race to who's in second place, but whatever. I'm all right. How are you two doing? 50. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Yeah,
we're doing great.
The flubbed video, by the way, of LB tonight was actually it was a joke that we planned to make fun of Elon and DeSantis doing the Twitter Spaces, the failure to launch thing.
Yeah. No, it was like this guy. We'll party with everybody, but that guy. It kind of came down to that. Like, there's an open door. It's fine. Come on in. No, not you. Goodbye.
Yeah, and there have been, at least on Twitter, these odd sightings of Elon at various raves, and where he's kind of dancing alone on the dance floor. And it's like, hey, if you are older than 25 years old, you belong nowhere near a rave, not within 5 miles, not within 2 counties distance. And he's out there kind of trying to do his little dance.
Well, that was the inspiration. It didn't start with seeing him dance. And I was like, oh God. No,
I think we have to put dance in scare quotes. I think we have to.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
sure. So lots to talk about. We wanted to have you on because, now there's lots of movement, or apparently lots of movement. Certainly legal Twitter is very, very convinced that indictments are coming about the documents case for Trump. There's a story that broke yesterday about reports of a dress rehearsal for what to do when the FBI came to move certain boxes out of the way. One of the employees there just happened to be walking by and helped another employee move boxes. This poor guy's now interviewed by every law enforcement agency under the sun. And yet Trump is, fine. He's golfing not far from where you are with his live cronies.
Miles from here. Along the lovely Potomac. With the Saudis and doing his little,
with the Saudis
sports washing to, take the Bonesaw Invitational Tournament apparently. But, no, it's so. Look, I think Jack Smith is getting close. Everybody, there was some expectation when Alvin Bragg indicted that New York would be the first to go, but some question with Fonnie Willis, I think, would have gone earlier until they ran into that hiccup that she had offered a number of the fake electors potential immunity, and shockingly enough, the attorney that many of them were using failed apparently to relay that on to her clients, that in fact the DA had offered this. So when they got different counsel, when they found out about that, surprisingly enough, several of them said, yeah, I'll take that deal. And so I think that pushed her down. And she said, now I think has made very clear down in Georgia to both local law enforcement, emergency management, as well as the courts, please keep your calendar open. I think it's into July, beginning of August. So I think that's locked in. And the big question and unknown was Jack Smith at the federal level. And there was some recent reporting. I think the thing about the dress rehearsal, that came out earlier. That was probably earlier in May. I think Beryl Howell, who's the chief judge within the District of Columbia, had issued a ruling when she said to Evan Corcoran, I think, A, you have to testify to the grand jury, and B, you have to turn over your notes because the crime fraud exception, the government had demonstrated that your testimony, your notes satisfies, normally attorneys, the protections attorneys have to not turn things over to the government are very, very high, but the government was able to demonstrate that he had in his possession information about crime. Not, and as best we can tell, it's not about crime that Corcoran, was involved in, but it's information that Trump may have committed crimes. And in that ruling, Beryl Howell said that looking at the games that Trump played with giving information to the archives, to NARA, that was almost a dress rehearsal for what they later did with the Department of Justice. So some of that, I think, got spun as new information. I think it's coming from a few weeks ago. But what's really important that was new in that article are a couple of points. One, nobody has been to the grand jury in D.C. since early this month. So there have been at least two or several sessions, at least, where nobody has come in, which seems and would reasonably indicate the government's put all the witnesses they have to put in front of the grand jury. Like, all the information has been loaded up. And typically you see that sort of pattern when you're getting close to an indictment. All the folks who have to testify have come in, they've given all that information to the grand jury, and now DOJ is sitting there getting all their ducks in a row, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. I'm certain going up the chain to Merrick Garland and saying, hey, look, here's what we intend to do. I don't think Garland is going to, like, vociferously either support or object, but they have to check in with him. And then I think there's some speculation, I've been hearing like post Memorial Day that, that's when the window opens. I don't think it'll be next week, but I do think it is certainly possible that Trump may face federal charges before he faces Georgia state charges. And that's just on Mar-a-Lago. That doesn't have anything to do with the January 6th insurrection. That doesn't have anything to do with the fake electors. So, things are picking up steam and picking up momentum. I know, everybody, certainly folks who haven't been in sort of prosecutors or law enforcement officers, investigators, there's a huge sense of impatience with why is this taking so long? I mean, it's been 2.5 years since January 6th, but things like this take time and you've got to get it right. And the last thing DOJ wants to do is bring charges against Trump and have them not stand up. So just the nature of working up, for a number of reasons, it unfortunately, or for better or worse, takes time. And I think we're at that time. So, the sort of rustling you hear, that sort of building of sort of electricity when you see a storm on the horizon and you sort of get the sense that something's coming. I do think we're at that point. I think we are, within a couple of few months of seeing significant charges, federal charges for the documents. And then after that, we'll see what comes with Georgia and then with January 6th and with the whole fake elector scheme.
Okay. It's crazy because I lose track of all the crimes. I mean, I really do. And this guy was the president. But I remember when we first found out about the documents, a friend of mine who's a lawyer was like, this is an easy case. This is somebody who just passed the bar exam could be like, okay, hey, FBI agent, did you find stuff there that was stolen? Yes, I did. Okay, that's it. It's open shut. So even though like chronologically, it seems to be the more recent one, it always seemed to me that this would be the first one to go just because it wasn't tied to anything else. And it was, I think, very easy to explain to a grand jury what happened because he stole stuff he wasn't allowed to have. I mean, people get that in a way that maybe the conspiracy stuff would be too, obscure for people to understand. Is that true? Or what do you think about that? You seem to think, because
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, look, when you look at DC, both the two cases that wrapped up, first with the Proud Boys and then with the Oath Keepers, these trials took months and they're very complex. And there's, the good news is the jury was diligent. They understood it. They deliberated. They returned guilty counts. But anytime you take months-long sort of presentations of your case, you run the risk that you make it too complicated for the jury. And then when you have a very simple, clean, very short, comparatively short sort of presentation of the evidence, it's easy for the jury to sit there and say, yeah, I get that. And okay, the elements of the crime are 1 and 2 and 3. And yep, they demonstrated each of those beyond a reasonable doubt. It makes it easier for the classified documents. And I think the other thing with this is I don't think, because there's a little bit of muddiness about, Trump saying, oh, I declassified it in my head, which is bullshit. He didn't fucking declassify anything with his head. He was too busy. He was like I just see a big like hamster chasing hamburger. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a primal brain, whatever is in front of him that he is scared about or wants. There is no long-term, I am declassifying national security information relating to the national. That's not going on. He didn't do it. But there is some question about what the president can and can't do with classified information. What I think is very clear is that he was repeatedly told, you can't have this. He was repeatedly told, we have to return it. He was repeatedly told, NARA wants it. You can't keep it under the Presidential Records Act. He was repeatedly told, there's a subpoena from the Department of Justice that you have to turn it over. And it appears that there's some evidence that he worked with this guy named Walt Nauta, who's his valet, his sort of body man who does stuff, and that potentially at least the two of them worked to move things around so that his attorneys weren't able to get a complete inventory. So that obstruction, that gets you away from like, well, did he declassify it or not? That just pure obstruction of a criminal proceeding is a very compelling case. If you have two people conspiring together, that bumps up the severity sentence-wise. So I think, when I think of how, if I'm DOJ, they present this, if I had to guess, it is not so much focusing on the classified aspect of it. They're going to focus on the obstruction, and they're going to focus on working together in a conspiracy. And related to that is they were talking about this classified information, but it's not going to be, I would guess, the other way around, right? It's not going to be a central focus on the classified information that, oh, by the way, he obstructed. They're together. You can't separate them. But I think in terms of under the public understanding, the jury understanding, it's easier to think about this as an obstruction case featuring classified information than a classified information case featuring obstruction. At the end of the day, it's all semantics, but I think we're going to be there. I think we'll have an answer, certainly on or about the Independence Day.
Okay. Sorry.
That's good. Yeah. You did the thing like Elon, and DeSantis on the, no, it's fine. That's good, Pete. This is good news because, like I said at the opening, it gets frustrating and we try not to go too hard either way. We just try to take news as it comes and, have faith here. But it does feel like things are brewing a little bit on this. So it's encouraging to hear that you think that also. What do you think is the deal, by the way, with Mark Meadows? Because he's a guy who was like in the thick of everything, especially as it pertained to J6, and to the point where he pissed off everybody. He pissed off the DOJ and he pissed off the Republicans. And now he's kind of radio silent. And when Denver Riggleman was on a couple of weeks ago, I asked him, is this guy just really stupid? Because he seems dumb to me. And no, the answer was no. So, okay, we can eliminate that then. So what do you think he's up to? Or to avoid speculation, what is it? What are the possibilities here that you see for what he might be doing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And look, he clearly has been, of all these people and all the attorneys for various parties who are talking, you do not hear anything from Mark Meadows, nothing. And as an investigator, as a prosecutor, if you want to get to somebody like Trump, who notoriously does not write anything down, who does not take notes, who does not send emails, you need somebody close in to him who was present for things he said. So it's not hearsay. It's directly, I heard this, he said it to me, that will cooperate with you. Nobody around Trump is going to voluntarily cooperate. They're just not going to do it. I mean, look at Weisselberg. Nobody of their own accord is going to choose to say, "Oh yes, out of my patriotic duty, I'm gonna give you all this information." So what you have to do then is get them into some sort of a bind where it's like, look, you have a choice. You can cooperate, and either we won't charge you, we'll give you some minor misdemeanor, or we're going to bring charges against you, and you're going to go away to jail for probably a long time. That's the sort of force it will take typically to flip somebody. if I had to guess, I think Meadows' silence, one, indicates he is listening to good legal advice. Good attorneys are typically going to tell their clients to shut the hell up. Don't talk. We're not going to talk to the media. Just stay silent. I mean, what's her name? Joe DeGenova and Victoria Tonsig are another two who've like, poof, they disappeared off the face of the earth. Ever since Rudy Giuliani had all his electronics seized and they put out these additional search warrants for Victoria and Joe and John Solomon. John's still running his fucking mouth on whatever the bogus like news site he runs. But the people who utterly disappear tell me that they both have probably competent attorneys, and as importantly, they're listening to those attorneys. And so the options are, one, Meadows doesn't know what he's doing. I don't buy that. Two, Meadows is being advised to stay silent for some reason or be quiet. And then when you look at that, the question is, A, is he cooperating? B, and related to that, is he facing any sort of criminal exposure himself? And those two can come together, right? I mean, he could be like facing charges, and so his attorney's saying, don't say a word. And so he just doesn't want to get in worse trouble. Or, there's been a lot of rumbling that, he is cooperating. So the good news is when it gets to things like that, there's been if you go read the media right now, you can read a bunch of stuff at Mar-a-Lago. What you can't see is, what is Jack Smith doing with regard to the fake electors? What is he doing with regard to, we know what Enrique Tarrio did with the Proud Boys. We know what Stuart Rhodes did with the Oath Keepers. We don't know what their entry point was with Rudy or Roger Stone or Mike Flynn or Mark Meadows. There's just a gap there. I am certain Jack Smith and his investigators and prosecutors know exactly what the connections were in there, and they're pursuing it. But the fact that nobody is talking about it, one, it's a good thing from a prosecution side. But I think that's after we get past Mar-a-Lago, that's going to be the next focus. Like who in that, because when you're at Enrique Tarrio and you're at Stuart Rhodes, there is only one layer of separation of Donald Trump. And that is going to be the
Mark
usual
Meadows.
suspects. Plus or minus, right. Mark Meadows, Roger Stone.
Well, let's also.
It's going to be Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, Rudy, but there are likely not multiple layers. You've got one membrane to get you from these guys who've been convicted. Like Rhodes just got 18 years, right?
I think it's Mark. So the other thing in there I want is that with the fake electors, remember that there was that reporting that it seemed like there was a form going out to all these different things. Like the plans were coming from inside the house, and from inside the house, there was coordination of those plans. And the only person I could kind of project to say, okay, who is making sure everybody had the right, had their little forms to walk in and da-da-da. And, it's Mark. So there he was. Who do we know was on the phone? Who's sliding Donald the number? I just need, and he's like, you could tell someone to put that 11,000 whatever votes, guys. Like someone put a number in front of him. So he's got his campaign people and he's got Meadows. And they were all in there giving him the information that he needed in his hamster wheel, ketchup throwing, grab him by the pussy brain. It's not like he's organized with this stuff, right? Not that he's dumb. It's just these people are all sycophantic helpers, right? They're all enablers. And it's not like he's going to try to pull off an insurrection without his enablers. So, and there's Mark, the chief enabler. I wanted to go back to the documents for a second before I get blown up again off this platform. But, it does seem, I don't know if you guys mentioned this, it seems like it's bookended by these Saudi trips too.
No.
We had, and
he would never.
I know. And Gal had put something in here, one of our listeners, and I had done stuff too, like looking at and posting about these sort of, the nuclear reactor, this technology, the small modular thing, because it was reporting that in some of these documents, it was nuclear tech. And of course it was like, you could see the far, the right, it's not even far anymore, the Republicans going, oh, he didn't give code, like making everybody think they're talking about nuclear codes, like the email server getting collapsed and everything. But it's not, it's nuclear technology. And I think it was as a possibility, I think it was in the Cummings report, right? Where we got out of Elijah Cummings reports, we got scrubbed. It's very difficult to find it. It wasn't on any of the before Donald left, it was taken down from, or when the Republicans got in, it was taken down from the House website. I have a copy of it. We should make sure we're spreading that around. But he's talking about the same thing in there. He was talking about in that report that there was communications with the Saudis around happening, I think, with Mike Flynn, right, at the in the inauguration and sort of beyond, around nuclear technology and getting it into the hands of the Saudis. So I don't know if you have anything to say about any of that, but I just find it suspicious that here's a stupid golf thing popping up on the golf courses, dancing with their swords over Ivana's grave, and in these classified documents are always in the news. It's so
bury at the golf course to get the tax deduction, right? No, I think that it's a good question, and I think it goes to the heart of like what if. Hopefully, before you bring charges, like what is your theory of the case, right? If you're going to present it to the jury, you can lay out the elements of the crime, but hopefully you're able to say why he did it. And there's some initial reporting that, he's just a hoarder. Well, that's BS. I don't think that's it. But you've seen recently that Jack Smith, there's this recent subpoena too that I think the Trump the Trump companies essentially asking for any records of business deals going back to 2017. So like from the moment he was inaugurated forward, with any deals with the countries of France, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Oman. There are three more. I don't know for the Emiratis, but China was one. But there was a very specific request for any sort of deals with these foreign nations. And so the question is, why is Jack Smith asking about that? And why those particular nations? And how did he arrive at that? Like North Korea is not on the list. Why not? India and Pakistan are not on the list. Why not? England is not on the list. Netherlands isn't. Why? How is it that he got to those 7 or 8 countries? And I think what they're trying to do is to show and explain what motive Trump might have had to keep those documents and what he might have either done or considered doing with it. And certainly, that when you look at the Saudis in particular, he got, Jared got $2 billion. They got this sweetheart deal for this little, for the bone saw tournament, right? For the LIV, sports washing the Saudi reputation to play at all these Trump properties. So when you look at, you say, okay, well, that's some of what we know just about Saudi Arabia, which might give him a motive to keep information either about or relating to Saudi Arabia. But then, why are they asking about France? There's been a lot of speculation that he had a leadership profile about Macron and his, sort of, personal sort of foibles. And that, did he use that for business deals? Was he using that for blackmail? But then what about, Oman? He had I think a licensing deal for some sort of Trump property. But in same question, I think, with Turkey. But so the question would be, why is it that Jack Smith wants this information? And I think the answer is he wants it to be able to show a motive for Trump to have kept it. It wasn't just a curio that he has some desire to pull out, like a rabbit out of the hat, some classified document, that he had an actual purpose that benefited him to have kept that information. So I think that's what's there. And I think, again, that was a fairly recently reported, but perhaps earlier issued subpoena. But in terms of, again, that's why I don't think it's not going to be next week. I mean, I'll be proven wrong. I'd be thrilled.
Okay.
But, DOJ is going to have to get back all of these subpoenas and requests that went back. They're going to have to get that back. If there's any issue, they got to litigate it, say, no, fuck nuts, you gave us 50%, we need the 100%. That takes time. But at whatever point they get all the information back, they need to digest it. If there are any leads or investigation that has to be done, they have to go do that. And then finally, once they have all that information, they can sit down and make a decision about what they're going to charge. But they're close, right? I mean, I do think they are at a point where, again, we are weeks to a few months, not longer horizon than that.
Okay.
That's good. If it's Oman, then I think Connor Roy might be involved, in which case we're all fucked.
Interesting how it's coming around.
I have to ask my woman what she thinks about Oman. That's the line. Right?
This is Succession references for everybody who doesn't watch Succession.
And anybody that studied maps, like a geek like me, like howled at that. Like, you just want to put the W in front of Oman because it's just so obvious, right? Okay.
Or you could be like Trump, and what did he call him? Nipple and button, right? Instead of Nepal and Bhutan, he was looking at a map. Remember that?
No.
Talking about those little countries, a nipple and button.
Oh no!
Master of the map of the modern world that he is.
Oh my gosh!
Well, he can change it with Sharpie. It's fine.
Yes,
it's fine.
Yes, just
All right.
Flick
So
of the
Pete,
wrist.
will you stick around with us? Because we're going to move.
Yeah.
We're going to go to
Yeah.
our next guest, but we want you in the mix as well for
I'll
our
scooch down on the
celebration.
couch and
Okay,
Yeah,
we're
this is like-
scooching you down.
This is
All
like
right.
the Carson thing. This is the Carson thing.
Yeah.
Our next guest, okay, is a journalist, best-selling author, documentary producer, and publisher of a substack on politics called American Freakshow, which everybody should sign up for. Pete, you have a substack too, which we failed to promote here on the show. 5 demerits for me. Okay, she's written about the vaccine rollout and response, the Trump women, the Michigan militia group, and most recently, Barre Seid, the reclusive billionaire who gave fucking Leonard Leo $1.6 billion. Nina Burleigh, how are you?
Burleigh.
Happy 50th, kids.
Thank
you. You were there for the first one.
You're our first
I'm
guest.
so honored to be here for the 50th.
Yay.
We made it.
We
And,
made it.
Do you guys know each other? Here, we're introducing you now. Pete, Nina,
Hi.
Nina, Pete.
Hi, Pete.
Hey.
Of course I know who you are. I've written
Nina.
your name a few times. Nice to meet you.
Nice
It was
to meet you
interesting
too.
listening to you talk. Thank you for explaining the where we're at with the legal system here. I was sort of, while you were talking, trying to look up Jared Kushner's $2 billion, because that sort of falls through the cracks with what is going on. And following that amount of money is worthwhile. Do you think the DOJ is ever going to look into that?
I think absent a indication or an allegation of wrongdoing, I doubt it. I mean, the funny thing is like the advisors to the Saudi Wealth Fund told the Saudis, don't do it. It's a horrible bet. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Don't give him the money. And then they went ahead and gave him the $2 billion anyway.
They did it anyway.
Yeah.
What's 2 billion among friends? You know,
Oh my.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that we're ever going to have an investigation into the intentionally botched COVID response, and we should. 1 million Americans died.
More than
Well, the House had a committee looking into it for a while, but nobody's paying attention because the 1/6, the riot, the insurrection, sucked all the air out of it.
Yeah.
I remember you making that argument even in the moment, Nina, that focusing on the COVID response.
Yeah, because they're the committee was finding out all sorts of things. There's all sorts of chicanery about where the money went and what they were doing, and sweetheart deals and no bid contracts and just general mayhem. And they release these reports every once in a while, and they do get covered, but after the insurrection,
After the insurrection, there also seems to be something of like,
AI.
it got so weaponized. COVID got so that it's like, we don't want to deal with it because there's so many people, like, we don't want Americans fighting. It's like 1 million people are dead and so many millions more injured.
Yeah, but the other thing about the COVID is that, like,
the propaganda is hard for you.
In 1919, a lot of people died, millions, and people, Americans stopped talking about it as soon as it was gone over. Like, people just want to forget, and I think that's kind of part of it. That's kind of what's going on. I just had a friend this minute send me an email and say she was down for 2 weeks with it.
Okay.
My bike.
Yeah, it's going around here too, by the way.
It's my biking buddy.
Sure.
Yeah. Not good. And it's
all right,
nice.
We want to ask you about your fantastic article in the New Republic. And, we've been waiting. We knew you were doing something, and it was such a wonderful, it was like, oh my God, look what she did. Maybe give everyone a sort of a review of the top line of it in case they haven't had a chance to read it, but everyone really, truly go read Nina's recent piece in the New Republic.
Really
I'm Barre Seid.
Important.
Thank you. Well, it's a Chicago electronics billionaire, 90 some years old. 2 years ago decided to leave his entire company's value to Leonard Leo, who's a knight of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, anti-abortion fanatic, and court packer, Supreme Court packer, and now other kinds of packer, I guess. I'm from Chicago, and I thought, I used to cover politics there, and I thought, what would possess somebody to leave that much money to this incredibly regressive operation, socially, politically regressive operation, and not leave like, $100 to the Humane Society, right? Or, the kids, he lives in Chicago, and just, a couple miles away, the West Side is a mess. And there are kids who my brother teaches over there, and there are kids who, 90% of them are going to end up working at McDonald's. They're getting horrible educations. And anyway, why would you leave all your money? So I thought it's worthwhile kind of looking into what motivated him. So that was the original motivation. And the challenge was that he's a very shy guy. He's made sure that he remained anonymous for many, many years, even while he was like doling out tranches of $20 million donations to the Koch brothers U.S. term limits operation, which was an incubator for people like Mike Pompeo in Kansas. Right. He managed to stay under the radar. And what the story ended up being about really was how I kind of think maybe I got to the Rosebud, but I don't know. But I think it's more about sort of mapping how these right wingers coaxed this dude out and got that money into where it went. How they kind of groomed him, cajoled, flattered, wheedled, flattered, basically, and worked on him until, first as I said, he was forking over tens of millions to the U.S. term limits, and that was back in, I think, the 90s. And then they got him paying George Mason University Law School, which is a nest of extreme
Scaliaphiles.
Yeah.
He bankrolled that name change. There was this sort of anonymous donor, and then thanks to the efforts of a lawyer, a graduate of the school, and some of the students, they managed to ferret out. They FOIA'd the emails between these leaders of that school, the dean and these other guys, and Seid, which is great. It's great fun to read them. They're online. You can read them. They're probably it's watching these guys butter him up, the dean of the law school, and it's just sort of like it's a master class in suck-uppery to a billionaire. It's so embarrassing, and it also is embarrassing because he wanted to maintain his anonymity. Now, the New York Times and ProPublica were the first to break the story in August of last year. I think it was around August, that this had happened. This is a record amount of dark money being handed over to, Leonard Leo. And the question that everybody has, except for the ProPublica reporters and the Times, is who dropped the dime on him. So that's kind of an interesting mystery, and I didn't look into it, but I think that it probably had to do with somebody at the Federalist Society not particularly happy about the way the money was being spent, and that maybe somebody else thought they were going to get that money. So anyway, it's the logical outcome of the Citizens United ruling.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise. It's a gargantuan sum of money, and talking to philanthropists and charitable organizations, leaders of charitable organizations, other political funds, I came to understand that, they can spend $200 million a year and not touch the nut.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the thing that was the most upsetting.
They can do this, and so Leo, around the time that he got this fund, around the time that he got this money, he started setting up these other operations, because Federalist Society isn't supposed to do political spending. So even though that he'd been pouring money into like RAGA, you know what that is, and
Republican attorney generals.
Republican attorney generals, because they're all part of this judge buying operation. Mm-hmm. If you can get RAGA, Republican attorney generals, to file amicus briefs, You find somebody the game is you find somebody first. You put the judge in. You buy the judge and you put him in, him or her. Then you steer your case to that judge, which our system incredibly allows them to do, so they can judge shop. And then you get, if it gets up to the higher courts, you get these attorney generals, the Republican Attorney Generals Association. You finance them to file what's called an amicus brief, and that helps them create this decision that they're going to make. But these are activist courts now, so they're use these amicus briefs as a way to push them into what they want. So
as a friend of mine says, Nina, it's the lawyers. It's the lawyers.
Oh, let's kill all the lawyers.
Getting it all up there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it always is the lawyers. But I mean, now they own the judges, and it's it's not a pretty picture. And I did get, I think Greg, you're one of many people who sent me emails or DM'd me afterwards saying, I despair. Is it all over?
It's the money. It's the sheer scope of the money and the evil of this guy. Just like you said, let's be fair. He did give money to the opera. What a man of the people. He gave money to the opera.
He gave a lot of money
his
to the
wife
University of Chicago.
sang not as well as my wife sings, but still.
And not as well as you sing. But he, he did give money. Right. He gave money to Chicago cultural operations. University of Chicago, he gave many millions to. Over his lifetime, he's given money to cultural organizations in Chicago, the symphony, opera.
Great. They're all going to be canceled now because of the Leonard Leo stuff.
But one of the things that was so frustrating was when I was there, I thought, surely the School of the Art Institute and some of these like set designers for his little chamber opera company are not on board with, homophobic judges, Supreme Court rulings, allowing discrimination against gay people, all that. And surely somebody's going to get on the phone and tell me what it's like to be around him, or who he is, or how he acts. And they just ran for the hills.
Wow.
And that's the power of cash and money. And
scary. But it's also he's in with scary people.
They were utterly silenced. And I don't think it was out of fear of him. I think it was just like, maybe we can get more money out of him.
Oh, boy.
That's even worse.
It's just so venal. But again, it is the logical, absolutely predictable, logical outcome of Citizens United. And when people have been emailing me or DMing me, or should we despair? Is this the end of our democracy? Well, it's pretty bad, but it was actually pretty bad in 2013 when this happened, or 2010 when they passed this, when this court ruled. And, you just have to get behind people like Sheldon Whitehouse and, vote, get out there and vote. And, they can seize the levers up to a point, but they can't really buy everything. I don't think. I mean, so I guess, it's my Midwestern Pollyanna-ishness. I just can't go there. I don't go there.
Nina, no one's ever confused you with Pollyanna. People, you want to say something?
I got a question for you. So you mentioned White House.
But I am an optimist, I believe. I do.
Okay, good. All right,
Pete, what's your question?
No, so it was interesting because you mentioned White House and you also mentioned your Chicago, Illinois connections. What the hell is going on with Dick Durbin? I hear White House, he gets out there, he's out in front, he's asking the hard questions, he's demanding answers. But when I listen to what Dick Durbin is saying on the Senate Judiciary, I don't understand why, given the majority, and I know Dianne Feinstein was away, but she's back now. Yeah. What is the source? What is the reason for the seeming inaction out of the Senate on the Supreme Court? I
don't know. I mean, I'm not covering Congress anymore. I know who Dick Durbin is. I've paid attention to him on occasion, but I don't know why. I mean, I think it's part of a larger malaise within the Democratic Party where they don't want to, they're reluctant for some reason to really go to the mat. I mean, what else could it be? They're as a party, they don't do that.
No,
I
they don't.
think they're just lost in it. I think they don't fucking understand where we are because they've been in these jobs for so long. They're in their little bubble, just like the Supreme Court people are in their little bubble, and they don't really understand what's happening outside of the bubble.
How can you not, if you're a senator? Okay, I get it. Yeah, they're in the Senate.
This
right?
is
the House
right here.
Lords.
This is it.
But they've been sitting there with Mitch McConnell. They've been watching Mitch McConnell yank the legal system, yank the rug out from under the legal system. They've been watching that. They watched him say no to Obama's Supreme Court pick for a year.
They are completely submissive.
They don't get a pass on that.
I'm not giving them a pass.
When
either
Biden
way, they
got
suck.
elected and they had the House and the Senate for 2 years, they should have come out the day after that insurrection and the day after Biden came in there and said, we're packing the court. We're going to add some judges. We're going to add DC and Puerto Rico as states. And you know what? Let's start talking about making Wyoming, Montana, Dakota one state senator. And just throw it all down. Why they don't do that, I don't understand. I just don't, because that's what the other side would have done.
If only some reporter had written a piece about how DC and Puerto Rico could be a state right after this happened. Oh, right. You did. Never mind. You did. Google it.
To me. All right, I have a Hey Pete question about the Barre Seid piece. Hey Pete.
A what question?
A Hey Pete question. This is like
a Pete question?
Hey Pete. Because we have Pete here. So HEY.
Oh, Hey Pete. Oh, yeah.
Hey,
okay.
Pete. Okay. So Hey Pete. What's the Knights of Malta?
And that's Nina. That's another question for you. So, like, as a lapsed, I'm a Catholic, but I couldn't tell you the last time. Sadly, I went to mass. The Knights of Malta. There is. I mean, there's a lot of Catholicism, right? It's a big tent. There are people who are very, like most religions, pretty progressive, pretty liberal, and then there's some very, very conservative strains. And it strikes me that Leonard Leo, in particular, the Knights of Malta, the whole Opus Dei, there are elements of the Catholic Church which are extraordinarily conservative. And Nina, my question was, is Leonard Leo like a true believer, or is he just like wearing this mantle to make it seem like he's very religious? Or is he in fact does he subscribe and believe these rather...
Yes, true believer. Absolutely true believer.
I think he is a true believer. And I think, so the person who brought Seid to Leonard Leo, who brought him into this universe, is a fanatical anti-abortion Chicago politico who is the only person who really has talked to reporters about Barre Seid. He is a fanatic. And what's interesting about Barre Seid and these anti-abortion fanatics is that Barre Seid is a secular Jew and he doesn't care about abortion. He absolutely doesn't care about abortion. And he wasn't even that involved in like pro-Israel stuff until this guy, the source who talks, Steve Barre, started talking to him about, maybe you should put some money into Israel and let's engage the evangelicals and get Christian. He's financed a lot of Christian Zionist operations. I don't know if you know what that is, but his money went into sort of pro-Israel stuff after a point, but that also wasn't a passion of his. All he cared about was making money and being left alone, I think, and not being taxed. And I think that the mentality is like, it's like a Robert Mercer, right? Robert Mercer, there are these guys who made a lot of money who think that because they made a lot of money, they are superior. They're actually like supermen. And they're supermen, and the rest of us are just sort of peons. And how dare we tell them how to spend their money? And how dare the government tell them? In Barre Seid's case, he also had this side gig as in owning industrial companies in Chicago that were dumping in Superfund sites. Right. Okay. And I found that. I mean, there are documents where he, his companies had dumped in Gary, Indiana, one of the epic Superfund sites. And I think that's kind of one of the motivations. It's like, how dare you tell us what to do? You peon.
Who are you to think
you know,
can
we
tell
are
us?
supermen. We are billionaires. And I think, and we also have a society in which billionaires are privileged like that. Like people, you know, the fact that our IRS says, you know, oh, it's okay. We don't need to know your names, right? These 501c4s or 3s, I always get the number mixed. They're like, they don't have to give their names. It's because, and they, you know, they can give all their money to these regressive projects to keep themselves in these positions of, you know, basically feudal lordship power for familial, you know, for generations to come. They're privileged in so many ways, and our society is allowing them to do that. And that's partly because all of these people, and you see them in the Elon Musk Twitter feeds, right? You see these people are just, they're like fanboys. They love him. He's so great because maybe we can be like him someday, or I don't know, you know, they're just
lost.
That's who they are. That's what this is. This dude just happens to be 90 something years old, but it privileges these wacko cranky people. You know, I'm sorry, but Mercer's a crank with, you know, he loves cats more than people. This guy is too.
Come on.
He also has the largest private collection of arms.
Arms. Yes. So,
and the largest private collection
have these
of arms. And he has he has an obsession with Alice in Wonderland, and he's got his trains, and he just plays with model trains.
And that's right. And that's who got to, you know, be Steve Bannon's
sugar daddy.
Okay.
I want to talk very quickly. I want to give a quick Leonard Leo rant because Pete asked the question. Pete made the mistake of asking me the question.
Yeah, because
Leonard
Greg
Leo.
actually does know a lot about the Metro.
Leonard Leo is from a shitty town in central Jersey. He's embarrassed about it. He went to Cornell because he didn't get into Harvard. He's embarrassed about that too. He's embarrassed about a lot of things. Knights of Malta, anybody can be a Knight of Malta if you donate enough money to the fucking church. It's not that big of a deal. It's just, if you're American and you're in the Knights of Malta, it means you wrote a big check. That's all it fucking
Can you be a nun of Malta?
No. And the
Can you be a maid of Malta? Can you be a handmaid of Malta?
You cannot. You could be a knave of Malta.
Handmaid of Malta, maybe. Right?
Yeah. He's involved. Everybody flows out of that Catholic Information Center in D.C., which back in the day was presided over by Father McCloskey, who was this Opus Dei guy. I don't like to say anyone's in Opus Dei because I don't know, but he was. And there's a lot of people in his circle that were influenced by his thinking. Clarence Thomas and Scalia among them. Leonard Leo does not believe in abortion. Famously, he had a daughter who had spinal bifida. She died young. There was lots of thinking that she's a saint and they're trying to saint her. And she drew drawings and Clarence Thomas has them up in their office. And it's all, so yes, true believers. And I know people who have met him. I know a guy that met him on the subway, or I'm sorry, it's DC, the Metro, and he was talking about theology and all this kind of stuff. He believes it. He's not, but probably after a while, you're like, well, we have 1.6 billion is a lot. I could cut off some of that and fund my wine cellar, right? I mean, Jesus was into wine. It's got to be cool, right? I mean, it's fine. So there is the money may corrupt him, and the fact that he wants to infiltrate the entertainment space. Please, Leonard Leo, spend the money on movies. Yeah, right now is a good time. Make a movie now.
I think he is. I'm just going to cut him to say.
Mel Gibson is looking for work. He is going to fall.
He's going to go corrupt. That's what's happening.
It looks like
that also is what's going to happen.
Yeah,
he's already going down that road.
It looks like it. Yeah. It looks like it. Okay, we have to do announcements. The announcement is this is our 50th show, guys. There's going to be after hours after the show. This is also my 100th episode of Prevail today.
Yay!
So I don't know. It's a lot of 50 and 100s going on.
So hard. That's a lot of work.
Do you guys have announcements? Nina,
what's your announcement? You guys have announcements. Nina.
Oh my God, what am I working on?
Article. What are you working on?
We're doing a documentary on the Trump women.
Yes.
Ooh, fun. Yeah. Which you wrote a book about that people can go buy.
What am I working on? Oh, I was just down. This completely unrelated. I was in the jungle with a marine biologist working on leatherback turtle conservation.
Good for you. Oh my God.
I was wondering what you're doing there.
Are you following me on Instagram?
No, we're
I
not
don't
on
really.
Instagram.
Je
We'll
ne
get it
Instagram
together.
pas.
We'll get
It's
over
so
there.
pathetic. I took it off my phone and then I put it back on, but it was amazing. They go out from 10 p.m. until dawn every night, and there are these giant prehistoric creatures laying eggs on the sand. And but there's a lot of there's a conflict down there. I can't really talk about it right now, but that's the story I'm doing about things that are going on in Colombia. It's the Darien Gap, basically.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, so we have that
Darien, on a mount at Darien. That's the Keats, the Keats poem, as I'm sure you know.
I did not know that. And
okay, there's a Keats
such
poem.
a good English major.
Yeah.
You're a better English major.
I would know, but I didn't know that until last week. So whatever. There's a Keats poem. I'll send it to you. Nina, send Keats.
Are you taking like brush up courses?
No.
Feels
who
like
has
that,
time
right?
for this shit?
No,
In
listen.
19th century literature.
It feels like that, being his partner in this, because I don't know where the retention went. I don't have it. I have to go back in and
like I do.
Amazing.
You do.
You much. You retain so much more
because
than
I'm older.
Forget it.
Okay,
Georgetown literary training.
Yeah. Georgetown FTW, by the way. That's what it is. It's because I majored English there. That's what it's about. Pete, do you have announcements?
Pete.
I have not nearly anything as interesting as that. I am now co-hosting a podcast with Allison Gill called Clean Up on Aisle 45, looking at all the comings and goings of the legal process surrounding everything Trump related.
Cool.
So
we'll download that.
From the New York AG to the Georgia Attorney General to DC, all the stuff going on, kind of keeping track of that and all the Jim Jordan's oversight dumpster fires. But I wish I would like to go track the movement and of turtles and other endangered species. Sounds much more invigorating and meaningful.
It does. Good for you.
Okay, good.
All right,
everybody go download that.
Clean Up on Aisle 45 is great, by the way, everybody. So put that on your little menu, have it download, and listen. You can listen to Pete and Allison just sort of talk it out of like, what are we looking at here with all this stuff? It's great. It's a great show. You're good. You guys are good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Two very smart people. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to put the timer on the last one.
Okay. Yeah. What's the last one again? Jailhouse Rock. Right.
Jailhouse Rock.
I wasn't sure what the last one was going to be.
All right, we're all on the 8-minute clock now. We got to get this.
We're all on the 8-minute clock. So
yeah.
Jailhouse Rock. The idea here, I try to get vaguely song titles in these things. They're not. I failed. Document is an album. It's not a song title. Whatever. Jailhouse Rock is about because these guys they're going to jail. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boy guy are going to jail. The guy that put his fucking feet up on Pelosi's desk going to jail, even though he didn't want to because he's just a humble fireman. He was just in Pelosi's office because, I guess he was moved there by some force. I don't know. What's the force? Alex Jones, baby. Alex Jones. We must go to the Capitol. Okay. One of the first bits I did for my podcast was to read Shel Silverstein's poems in the Alex Jones voice, by the way. That was the children they mark and the children they know the place where the sidewalk ends. Okay, so the giving tree. Right on point. Pete, what were you thinking when you heard about the sentences for these guys?
Quickly, since we're on the clock, I have been to a ton of sentencing. There are many times I was angry or disappointed. There are a ton of times I was sad. I was never happy leaving a sentencing. I think, frankly, all of these are deserved. Many of them, like Stuart Rhodes, in my opinion, should have been longer than 18 years. I mean, the judge excoriated him about all the evil, the current danger he posed to the fabric of American democracy. And that's, but I'm going to give 18 years when the minimum was 20. So I would have liked to have seen more. Ultimately, anytime somebody's going to jail, it's because the system failed somewhere, somehow. There's somebody who decided they were going to break the societal compact, and it's not a happy time. I do think, however imperfect our system of justice is, things like this are an affirmation that the system can work. And would I've liked to see 20, 22 years? Sure. But 18 years, Stuart Rhodes is in his late 50s. He's going to be 72, 75 when he gets out. So effectively, that's, close to a life sentence. So it's a sort of, I guess, somber affirmation when you look at things like this. I'm not happy. I am angry on behalf of the Capitol Police officers, the Metropolitan Police officers, their families, all the Senate and congressional staffers, all the residents of Washington, D.C., all the first responders who suffered and continue to suffer because of the things that they did and led on that day. And this is a demonstration that our system can hold people to account for that. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. But it's never a happy yay celebration time. But nor is it, I don't know. It's complex, I guess.
Yeah. That's a great way to express it. I always feel empathy for people that are going to prison personally, even if they're awful and deserve it. Yeah, I feel like, my God, how awful, that must be for them right now in this moment. And they don't feel that. I think they don't. I think they, whatever. Nina, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, will there be a J6 choir DVD or CD or live stream? I suppose nobody does DVDs anymore. So live streams. I don't know. No, I had some thoughts because I'm in upstate New York, on the Delaware River, and there's a town, one of the nearby towns, had its local crank. The whole time we've had this house, there's been this guy who showed up at the town meetings and, tried to stop every single advance and progressive operation. And I mean, we're not talking about progressive like political. We're talking about like, I don't know, some, improving the streets or something. And he would just show up and one of those types, right? And he spent, of course, he was a Trumper, and he festooned from 2020. No, during the time that Trump was in office, he owned property in the middle of the town. He festooned it with these signs accusing Nancy Pelosi of being a traitor for China, working for China. And then after the 1/6 insurrection, he put signs up saying, the election was stolen. I mean, huge signs. So people driving into our town, this little town, were like, what kind of idiots lived here? Well, so it turns out his son FaceTimed himself on Facebook with an aluminum bat, bashing his way in to the Capitol, beating the shit out of people. And those images, when right after 1/6, remember when you had these very obvious images and people were like, we saw it, like, because people know him in the community, and everybody's like, the FBI needs to know, like, this dude, like, he's right here, and he's like, he's bragging about this. So anyway, he got caught, of course, and he's been sitting down there in DC for the last couple of years. They gave him a plea deal of some kind. They gave him a plea. He had the option of pleading and getting some like 4 years or something. No. I did this for Jesus. I'm not, so he was doing the Jesus thing. He's not. So that he just went to trial. I think he's got 15 years anyway. The moral of the story is, or the end of the story is, that his dad has been interviewed in the New York Times and interviewed locally, has said, who do you think he blames for this, for the kid behaving that way?
A woman, some woman.
Bingo. He goes, it's my ex-wife and the New York State divorce court system that created that.
Oh, the family courts, yes.
Always the family courts.
There you go. Yeah, divorce.
Not my political beliefs.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Pete. I know you were in charge of counterintelligence. Is it a good idea to live stream yourself committing a crime?
No, and stunningly enough, it seems like 9/10 of the people there did. So thank God.
Yeah,
for
they
that.
did.
But
well, let's while our clock is going and we've got you guys here.
Oh my God, that's funny, Nina. We've been having problems with her connection.
She looks like the Madonna.
She does. Right she really
freezes well. She freezes well.
She does. If I freeze, I'm like this.
Yeah.
But no, that's even too. It's more like, what can I do to get my double chin and into the frame? No, we dressed up like 70s because we did the I Feel Love tonight. So
Oh, right. Yes, Tina.
We're gonna give her a few seconds here to see if she can come back on. But while we're waiting, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming tonight. This was a special show for us, and it's always great to talk to you. It's almost like a I'm a novelist, really. I write these columns sometimes, and I just started doing this stuff basically when Trump became president. So for me to even participate at all in anything like this is it's really wonderful.
It just
for me.
went off.
Yeah, it's great. LB, what were you going to say?
The pardons, just this.
Fucking pardons.
This idea that, I think the one thing, Pete, and this goes back to even like all the other cases we were talking about with you earlier, of why people aren't, there's this incentive not to cooperate now in the hope, that no, I'll get a pardon. If it's not Trump, maybe it's Ron DeSantis or whoever else gets in there. I'm going to get a pardon if the administration changes hands from Democrat to Republican. The Republican president will pardon all of us. And I don't know. It just makes me sick to my stomach. Like, you're going to pardon seditionists. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that. You're right.
And this isn't some question about Gerald Ford looking at Nixon and saying we need to do it so the country can heal. This is something that Trump is, after saying I'm your retribution, that he is saying and refusing this little crazy raucous CNN town hall where he's got all the chanting, whooping it up supporters behind him saying, I'm going to pardon most of these folks and I'm not going to rule out pardoning the worst of them. And DeSantis now throwing his lot saying I won't pardon Trump and all these other people. So, the disappointment is, this isn't over. These sentences aren't sort of the final chapter. The final chapter is yet to be written. And the entirety of what seems like the Republican Party is now falling into line by saying, yeah, we're gonna pardon the bulk of these folks who engaged in, the most violent insurrection since the Civil War.
That's right.
We're just gonna
It would be great to have also another focus of an attorney general to look at corrupt pardons. And maybe that would be something if we can start investigating that a little bit, that it might disincentivize, a future corrupt pardon. You don't pardon the people who were your co-conspirators. That'd be nice.
You don't. No, I'm glad you brought that up. DeSantis floating that should invalidate him.
And he'll just deny he ever said it too. So,
well, he's too busy force feeding fucking Gitmo prisoners of war. They're not even prisoners of war.
A reminder of this.
Ooh. Yeah, if Trump's selling pardons, I don't know.
There's been that reporting that Rudy was, right? I mean, for a
$2
million.
Yeah, I mean that's in the lawsuit, but
right.
He was at least
John
bragging
Kiriakou,
about it.
I think, said that he might have. There was some deal there, but yes, I mean it's corrupt as all hell.
It's yeah. Well, let's hope justice comes. I tried. I have this book. This is the Penguin Book of English Verse, but the fucking On Chapman's Homer is not in there for some reason. I was going to read the Peak at Darien, whatever the hell it is. Nina, just for your benefit, because we had spoken about like when this is all over, let's just do a podcast about like literature and poems and stuff.
I would do that.
I know it'll be fun.
I'm not as I don't have it in my mind the way you do, but.
I don't have it in my mind. I'm just faking it.
I think you do because it comes out in every one of your pieces.
Pete, every Sunday I write a piece about about usually a poem or a short story or something artistic to try to focus on something nice, because we like to focus on nice things, which we like to do on this show, which brings us round back to when LB oh my God, is she frozen again?
She is.
She's frozen again. That's not as good of a freeze position. I'm going to take her off the screen. I want to say, again, for me, it's always great to see you guys. It's a miracle to me on some level the show exists at all, that the technology exists at all, that we can beam in here and all talk, to each other is kind of astonishing. And that we have such a wonderful audience watching and contributing their knowledge to what we talk about is also just it's amazing. So thank you both so much for spending time with us tonight. We appreciate it so much. And, I know that the audience does too. You've made everybody smarter. We're going to have the after show. I'll tweet out the link. We're going to start at 9:45. Okay. That's it. LB, you have anything else to add?
Before you
flicker out again.
I'm here. Yeah. Everybody have a great holiday weekend.
Amen.
Happy barbecuing.
Happy barbecuing. Enjoy each other. Enjoy community.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.